and pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Quandamooka's people, past, present, future, and emerging. I acknowledge and invoke the medicines of the animals resting on the land where I live, the curlew, echidna, owl, kookaburra, black-tailed wallaby, crow, and rainbow lorikeet. I honour you for the medicine you have gifted us with and call you forth to join us in this circle. To the winds of the south, the red-bellied black snake, please enter this space and help teach us to let go of what is no longer true. Just as you shed your skin, may we shed our past. Allow us to release and renew as you do. Guardian spirits of fire, the element of light, of energy, of the vigour which runs through our veins, I summon, stir, and call you up to witness all who gather here. To the winds of the west, the dingo, please enter this space so that we feel safe to enter the tender place of truth inside of ourselves. Teach us how to move through our own shadow, our own darkness. Help us trust life by feeling our interconnection with it. Guardian spirits of water, the element of love, of growth, of the abundance of the Great Mother, I summon, stir, and call you up to witness all who gather here. To the winds of the north and the Australian blue-banded bee, please fly into this space. You who memorises thousands of flowers but only goes to the ones that truly nourish you. Teach us about discernment and illuminate the path of where our soul nectar is so that we may not be distracted by false images. Guardian spirits of earth, the element of law, of endurance, of the understanding which cannot be shaken, I summon, stir, and call you up to witness all who gather here. To the winds of the east, the white-bellied sea eagle of this area, please arrive into this space and allow us to be lifted by you to our highest heights to see with a wider view. Teach us how to fly wingtip to wingtip with great spirit, moving from probability to possibility. Guardian spirits of air, the element of life, of intelligence, of the inspiration which moves us onwards, I summon, stir, and call you up to witness all who gather here. Mother Earth, thank you for this body, this life, these hands, this heart. Thank you for always holding us and in every moment so we are never without you. Thank you for being so profoundly generous that every offering we could ever make to you is something you have already offered to us. Help us to learn how to be more like you. Infuse us with the love that you are. Father Sun, Grandmother Moon, our star brothers and sisters, please shower your light down on us. Father Sun, just like there are some days where we don't see you, but we don't doubt your existence, may we have that same faith in our light. Grandmother Moon, just like we honour your cycles, may we trust our own. Star brothers and star sisters, help us to remember the true meaning of community and reflecting one another's light to each person we meet. Please illuminate the spaces in our being that are ready to awaken. Wisdom of our heart, please awaken, be our source of each thought, word, and action. Be our natural way in which we receive life. May the love that has led us here to this moment lead us through. I now declare this circle open and welcome each soul with love, and I call forth the wisdom of my soul to share with you today. Take a moment in silence to simply listen and receive the medicine of your own heart. Welcome, 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 everybody. Thank you for those who are joining me. Thank you for those who will be watching the recording. I welcome you all here today, where we're going to spend some time together talking about the energy of trauma. For those who don't know me, my name is Penny Hawkins, and I wrote a chapter in the Unapologetic book called Beyond the Illusion of the Human Lies the Truth of the Soul. What my chapter was about the labels and the false identities that I'd assumed from wearing those labels, from accepting them as my false truth, my false identity. But what I didn't write about in my chapter was that underneath each of those false identities, which took me away from my soul, was trauma. Trauma gave me all of those identities. And there's a lot of other trauma that I've experienced in my life as well that I didn't even mention in that chapter. When the opportunity came up to talk about trauma or to talk about something in the summit here today, I instantly knew that I wanted to talk about the energy of trauma. And I'm going to explain in a minute why I chose that as a topic. It's not a very sexy topic, and that's okay. But I just briefly want to mention, because technology and I have been challenged a bit constantly. I'm okay with Zoom in the online forums that I run, but when it comes to live streaming, it is very much still learning in process. And I've again had issues here this afternoon. So my beautiful co-author, Virginia, is actually co-host and helping me out. But I won't be monitoring the chat in Facebook. The reason I'm not going to do that is because I really want to maintain the integrity of my own energy and sharing with you here today. So to allow the flow to come through me, for me to be able to present that to you and offer it to you. But I do encourage you to comment, to put comments in there. If something resonates with you, put it in there. If something doesn't resonate with you, put it into the chat on Facebook. If you have any questions, please pop them in there as well. I will be coming back to them. This afternoon, I will be spending some time responding and acknowledging. So I do really, really encourage you to do that at any point throughout the presentation. I want to really just honour my focus here, right now. But I will be available after the sessions at any time. So feel free to reach out through other methods as well. So without further ado, why did I choose the topic of the energy of trauma? I did that because it's been my greatest learning in my journey in this lifetime. I have learnt so much from the trauma that I've actually been through, and I've also learnt an awful lot about the energy that's associated with trauma. And I have completely changed my life 360 degrees because of that. I now live so much healthier. I live free of pain within my body. I had fibromyalgia. I haven't had a fibromyalgia flare for a number of years. So I actually am living my fullest life. I am living my authentic self. I'm living from my soul. Now, some of the things you might hear me talk a little bit about today are some terminology that I use because it's the understanding that I've gained through my journey. It is also, I am founder and co-creator and co-facilitator with my partner Ross of a program called Journey Home to Soul. So some of the terminology that I'm going to use today is how we share our wisdom in that program. So you'll hear me talk about something called humanness. You'll hear me talk about the soul, And you'll hear me refer to the human operating system and the soul operating system. So just to give you a bit of an idea, the humanness is the human operating system. So that's very much the mind. It is also all our life experiences. It is our masks, our labels, our stories, our conditioned behaviours, our behavioural responses. It is our career, it is our education, it is our family, it is our human life. That's the humanness of us. When I talk about soul and the soul operating system, the soul is the heart. And when we arrive in this world, we are both a human and a soul. As we journey through our life, right from that very first day, we start to create a bit of an imbalance between our human and our soul operating systems, and the human actually starts to dominate. The soul tends to take a back seat, but the soul is the core essence of who you actually are. It is that heart-centered living, not being influenced by our humanness. And trauma is very much a part of our humanness, our life experiences. So that is how I sort of talk about it, to give you a little bit of an idea. So we're going to look today at what is trauma, what is energy, and what is the energy of trauma. The reason I chose to talk about this topic is because I am very, very passionate about it because of the difference it's made in my life. I'm also mum to 2 children, 2 teenage boys who, like me, have also been through some of the trauma that I've been through. And so I am seeing that come out in their life. It's also the work I now do, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. So, this is my soul work. This is what I am here to do. And I firmly believe that nobody should walk around carrying any kind of trauma at all. I'm passionate about it, as I said, because my life has changed 360 degrees. And it's changed because I now understand my personal energy signature. I now understand that traumatic experiences in our life leave an energetic imprint in the physical body, and that can cause disease, discomfort, and disability. In my case, the disease was fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. The discomfort was the constant pain that I was actually in. I couldn't work. I could barely parent. I certainly didn't do anything socially, and there's not a chance in hell I would have been sitting here like I am today in front of you. And the disability was that things I'd previously been able to do, like work. I've had a successful corporate career, like be a socially engaging human being. I've done that too. I used to have a very social job in community relations. I was able to do all those sort of things. So when I refer to disability, it's that the inability to do things anymore. The other reason my life has changed 360 degrees is because I understand that in order to fully heal, you need to know, acknowledge, and clear that energetic imprint from the physical body. And the other thing that helped me to heal was the understanding that emotion is energy in motion. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today as well. Albert Einstein is known for saying everything is energy. Very true. Not something everybody necessarily realizes. So everything we do, say, think, feel contains an energy. Every interaction we have with somebody else contains an energy, both theirs and yours. Every human emotion contains an energy in motion. Every life experience creates an energetic imprint. Every life experience. Every thought we have does the same, and the words we use. So understanding, knowing, and working with energy is a really critical part of our healing. And when you know your personal energy signature, which is unique to us, unique to our life, our human experiences, the human operating system, and the soul, when we understand our personal energy signature, it's where we can begin to work with it. So I want you to take a moment. So if you consider our human emotions as energy in motion, I want you to take a moment and think of something that brings you joy, makes you happy. Some kind of a celebration. It could be, children. It could be getting the job of your life. It could be being out in nature and absorbing the beautiful animals and the trees and things like that. I want you to just really take a moment, close your eyes, and focus on the energy of joy. And go within your body. When your mind is recalling that memory of joy, where is it showing within your body? What does it feel like inside your body? Now think about sadness, something that's made you sad. It could be a loss of a pet. It could be an injury that you've had. Something that makes you sad. Again, when you recall that memory, where does it show up in your body, within you? What kind of energy arrives within your body when you think of that? It could arrive and come up and out, or it could just be something that you really notice within your body. Allow that to come through. What you're feeling is the energy of sadness for you in your personal energy signature. What about if I say to you the words, your trauma's holding you back? What's your physical reaction to the way that I just said that to you? Again, feel free to add any comments about anything that you're feeling here into the chat. Share what it is that you're feeling. If I say that same statement to you and I say, your trauma's holding you back, with a softer energy, a gentler energy, a more loving energy, can you see the difference in your body receiving those words from me? That's the energy of trauma. Sorry, that's not the energy of trauma. That's the energy of me expressing and your reaction to it. So I've used the statement, your trauma is holding you back. And I said it two different ways. I said it aggressively, arrogantly, and I said it softly and gently with love. So again, the choice of how I expressed my energy to you is something that we have an energetic exchange with, and you feel within your physical body. And that's a really basic starting point of really tuning in to your own energy. Understanding our own energy and our personal energy signature is so powerful and was a huge part of my healing. And that's just the basics. So an example for you, I'm going to take a moment and I'm actually just going to drop myself into the energy of trauma using a memory that I have. And I'm going to express that both with my fingers, which is a form of light language, and shifting energy. And I'm going to see whether or not the spoken light language comes through as well with that. And I want you, as I do that, to focus within yourself. Close your eyes and receive what I am doing and saying within your body. So close your eyes. Moto Anakatama Shu Bakataka Utakamana Te Shu So within my body, as I was in that energy, I could feel goosebumps. I could feel the energy moving with my fingers, because I've worked so much with energy that I actually understand it. And a form of light language is what I'm doing with my hands right now. Like, I can actually move the energy, and I can move that energy within me. And I actually work with that in the work that I do with clients, but I also work with it in my everyday environment. So that's understanding the energy within me. And when something doesn't feel right, I actually am able to sit with that and to actually shift that. And you also have the ability to do that as well. So next time you're triggered by something, I encourage you to catch yourself early. Use the mind, the humanness, the human operating system, to actually be aware of that and recognize what you're feeling within your body. And listen to what your body is asking you to do in the way to shift it. And there's lots of different ways, which I'm going to mention. It's about deep internal listening to feel your energy, and the gift that is in doing that, I cannot stress the power of. So one of the first steps in understanding and healing from the energy of trauma is to start with understanding your own energy, and then look at how energy around you impacts you. So that's a snapshot of energy. I want to talk a little bit about trauma, and trauma is something that I could talk in a great lot of detail about. It is a key component of the Journey Home to Soul program. But, you know, if I was sitting around a fire with you, we'd probably talk till the sun came out. And because there is a lot, I mean, trauma is a lot. But what I want to share with you today, and approach from this point of view, is a quote by Peter Levine. His whole life work has been to do with trauma. And he has a quote which is, "Trauma is perhaps the most avoided, ignored, belittled, denied, misunderstood, and untreated cause of human suffering." So I'm going to have a look very briefly at each of those words and share with you, because that quote is so powerful, and from my own experiences, I believe to be very, very true, and it's certainly what I see in the work that I do. So the word avoided, it is avoided because people who've been through trauma often withdraw. They feel ashamed, they feel guilt, they put on masks, they think it's too hard to move or too confronting, or, they're concerned about being re-triggered, or they have the attitude, "I'm okay." I know I certainly was very much in that energy. I had the misbelief it was going to re-trigger me, and it was going to be too confronting, and masks were my speciality. I very much avoided acknowledging the trauma that I'd actually been through. And I'd been through that since I was born, because I've only just recently come to understand that being adopted is actually a major form of trauma. So I'm currently working through that. And this is the thing, we can heal from trauma, but like anything, there's many different layers. But I can say with confidence and lived experience that going into the energy of trauma is never as difficult or as challenging as that initial traumatic event to start with. So it's ignored. A lot of people are actually unaware that they're carrying trauma. Small trauma can impact us too. It is not just big trauma. What I see a lot of, and I know again within myself, is a lot of people don't recognize it as trauma. Normal life events can actually create a trauma. And even good events like being successful in business or things like that, they can come with different types of trauma as well. Might not be as life altering as, you know, some of the significant traumas like war and things like that, but it doesn't mean it's not trauma. Then there's things like generational trauma, which is where, for example, myself and my two boys, there's a generational trauma. If I wasn't to address the trauma that I've been through, that carries down the family line through the generations. And we can also, with generational trauma, people that we haven't met that are in our family line 3-4 generations ago, experiences that they've been through, because it is an energy, can actually carry through the family line. A lot of people aren't aware that that's possible. And then there's ancestral trauma. And, you know, ancestral and generational trauma are often used interchangeably. But from the perspective that I'm talking of, you know, there's many ancient cultures that see our ancestors as being every living thing. So mountains and rivers and trees and plants and birds and nature, and, you know, it's beyond just the humans. And so there's the ancestral trauma element as well, which comes into it, past lives. So they can actually impact us as well. So there's many reasons that people can ignore it. It's often belittled, as Peter says. Toughen up, get over it. Back in my day, and, you know, one that I heard quite a bit in my life through my adoptive father was, why is everything with you a drama? Not exactly going to encourage me to do anything about it, is it? So, you know, there's that being belittled about it, like it's something to be ashamed of and something embarrassing. We need to normalize the discussion on trauma, because there's great healing in that. You know, I never would have thought 4 or 5 years ago that I would be sitting here today talking about this or sharing any of my personal experience. And yet here I am, and extremely passionate about it, because I know the transformational change that can occur if you have the courage to be vulnerable. You don't have to do it all in one hit, and there's lots of different ways to handle it, which I'll come to. Peter says it's denied. And it is. You know, people disassociate. It can't happen to me. They see it as a weakness. As I said earlier, even good things can bring trauma. Or, you know, I've moved on, gotten over it. It's done. I'm fine. That denial. And again, that is something that I did very much so. And, you know, again, even recently with being part of this project, you know, it's the Unapologetic book, it's amazing what's come up for me. And, you know, I had become very clinical, you know, very much in the head, remembered the memories, could when I started to talk about them, I'd keep it simple. But there was a form of denying within myself the extent and the level of cruelty that I'd had in my life. And I had a beautiful mentor reflect to me the level of it. And I resist. And then I sat with it. And I'm currently, you know, working through that in my way with journaling and, yeah, the other things that I do. So, you know, denial is very, very common. It's misunderstood, Peter says. Absolutely. Trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder are often thought of something that's associated with soldiers, veterans, those that have witnessed horrific atrocities against humanity. They're the ones that get trauma and PTSD. It's not. Trauma, at some point in our lives, all of us are going to suffer from a trauma. Grief and loss. So, you know, a loved one passing, which is a natural part of our human experience, that is a form of trauma. relocating, whether it's countries, states, houses, whatever, that can be a form of trauma. I have 2 children that are both diagnosed with complex PTSD, which is a high level of PTSD and trauma because of the extent of the trauma they've actually been through. They're 14 and 16. So trauma is much more common than we realise and can be from simple things, not just big things. So that's a big reason why it's misunderstood. But what I want to offer to you is that understanding trauma contains an awful lot of power. When you befriend your trauma, when you're in a position to be able to do that, and I acknowledge 100% that it's a journey. It's not without its challenges. It's not always easy. Other times it can be much easier than you actually think it is. But when you actually have the courage and are brave enough to befriend your trauma with the intention of clearing it, that is where the shadow gold is. And that was the greatest gift for me. And I refer to it as shadow gold because trauma is shadow work. And ironically, if I was to have a conversation with most people in my circle of the world, and I use the word shadow work, we'd have an easy conversation really, really quickly. But not all of them, if I said to them, let's chat about trauma and the energy of trauma, not all of them would go there. And yet they're the same thing. Well, they're a form of shadow work. Peter also says it's untreated, and I absolutely would agree with that 100%. I have done so much over the years. Very early in my 20s, I did psychotherapy because I'd met my biological mother and father, and it had been quite a traumatic experience. I did psychotherapy. I've gone back and done that numerous times, and it has a place. I was on a cocktail of medications with fibromyalgia, and I also had a heart issue at the time as well. I had a heart attack at 43, 6 years ago. But it's untreated in that is, while it has a place, manages the symptoms and it ignores the cause. And when the cause of trauma is left untreated by mainstream medicine, it's masked. And what happens is you build upon the foundation of trauma continually. So it's an energetic imprint within our body that we are creating. So that very first trauma, no matter how big or small it is, just keeps getting built on. And, as I said, everybody has trauma. And it's so often some forms of trauma or instances of trauma are not easily recognizable. So you're creating this building of an energetic imprint within your body, layer upon layer upon layer. And that causes physical, mental, and emotional symptoms. They just increase. Fibromyalgia is a really good example of that. And it was my second rheumatologist, because the first rheumatologist I saw literally just put me on a cocktail of drugs. I put it on of medications, prescribed medications. One was a cancer drug called methotrexate. Made me as sick as a dog. I put on 20 kilos of weight from the medications I took, which just amplified the very symptoms of fibromyalgia that I was experiencing. My mental health suffered, everything suffered. But when I went to my second rheumatologist at the first appointment, one of the questions he asked me was, what was your childhood like? And by this stage, I actually had done enough research and I understood that fibromyalgia, one of the causes of it is childhood trauma. So I had that understanding, and he obviously had, studies, and, it is scientifically researched and there's lots of studies out there around it. So he understood that. And yet he put me on medication, not as heavy duty as the first rheumatologist, but he still put me on medication. So again, my symptoms were being managed and masked. They weren't being, the cause of it was not being looked at. And it is by looking at the cause of it that I am fibromyalgia free and have been. I haven't had a fibro flare for over 3 years, nearly 4. I'm not on any medications whatsoever at all. My mental health, my physical health, I'm back riding bikes, and, I'm back being a mum. I work, I've got my own business. So my life has changed completely. It's really, and Peter's saying it's untreated. Masking something isn't treating it. You need to get to the cause of it. So understand, how do we work with the energy of trauma? What I'm going to do is share with you some of the things that I do. But I've given you one of the main keys is understanding your own energy. And simple activities like what we did, when you're feeling an emotion going within your body and listening, deep inner listening to what your body is telling you. Movement, lots of different forms of movement. For me, dancing, 5 rhythms dancing is something that really helps me shift. I've had some massive clearings and shifting of energy within me on the dance floor, some that have left me tears streaming down my face, others of joy, moving the body and at the same time being aware of that energy within me. Going through the trauma that I have is what opened up my spiritual gifts, the light language, the codes, the ability to move the energy and to see through interactions with people. I can see the energy. I feel the energy. I get this inner knowing. All of those gifts have opened up to me from the trauma that I've experienced, and this is the shadow gold for me. The wisdom that's come and the work that I now do to assist others to shift that energy. So understanding your energy is really important, and you can build it. We just did something basic. Things like being in nature and being present and still, and actually getting out of the head and being aware and observing in silence what occurs around you. That's taking in an energy, and you can use breath work or breathing or just that stillness. That's moving an energy within you. For me, journaling and writing is a really important tool for me. That is how I express. Lately, I've also been receiving intuitive drawings, and I'm a practitioner in training for a fantastic program, the Sacred Architects of Light, which one of my fellow authors, Natalie, actually, that's part of her work that she does, and that's bringing through these codes, these healing energy codes that we can then work with in different ways, and it's unique to everybody. So there's that extra layer, like the sound is and again, it's a big one for me. Listening to music, music will often invoke an emotion within us, energy in motion. We'll feel it, a feeling within our physical body. If you know with your energy within, and you find just purely by experimentation what works for you, using music to actually shift energy as well. There's also a lot of research coming out from the US in particular to do with psychedelics. Like a lot of professionals are actually looking at psychedelics to treat trauma. So there's this, huge, that's a completely different, not mainstream way, but you have got interest from the mainstream. There's lots of research reports onto it, so there's, that's something there for certain people as well, which is fully done with professionals and, it's not done as some kind of recreation. So there's that aspect as well. Like there's so many different ways you can actually move your energy. And that's a lot of the work that I do now. One of the main things that I do is, as I said at the start, like I founded Journey Home to Soul, which my partner and I, we're co-creators and co-facilitators of that. And it's a program that is about the human operating system and the soul operating system, and understanding what both of them are, and in particular looking at the human operating system and how it impacts and takes us away from our soul, and how it, our experiences in life, our labels, our masks, our stories, our personal timelines, life events that have happened in our life, good and not so good. And I really don't like using that kind of terminology, but every experience. And it is a very deep dive program. It's based on the 4 pillars of self. self being soul. So surrendering, what do we need to surrender of our humanness to move towards our soul? Evolving, the evolving is, okay, so what do we need, or what helps us? What tools do we have that can shift us from, once we've surrendered, into that evolving? Loving, self-love, the term a lot of people don't, self-love is really hard to actually receive, but to give, because you're giving it to yourself, so hard to receive. Self-love, loving in general, loving is an energy. Like, there's so much in the loving pillar alone. And then feeling, and the feeling pillar is very much about energy in a very, very deep way, and all the different aspects. And so there are 4 modules. There's 8 weeks for each module, and there's integration time in between, so we don't run them straight after each other, and people can do one or they can do the whole lot. But it is stepping people through using their own life experiences. So we incorporate a number of things into that, like personal astrology and the personal timeline, and the simple question of who am I? We actually run a full day workshop on who am I, and it's not who we think we are as the human. It really is just really looking at all aspects of ourself and our life experiences, and who we think we are. And then those 3 sort of components are taken throughout the whole program, used by the people that participate to actually relate to the wisdom and the teachings and the experiential processes that we actually use throughout the program, to connect back to themselves. And Ross and I, we guide and we support. We don't give answers. We share wisdom. We share our experiences. So, here's the shadow goal for me in understanding the energy of trauma, is that my traumatic life experiences, and there's been a lot, I'm now able to offer that wisdom, as is Ross. Ross has been through his own trauma as well before, we were together. So, he shares his wisdom, and we do it for men and women. And again, there's healing in the fact that there's a masculine and a feminine, or a male and a female gender, actually facilitating the program, but it is a mixed program. And so there's also great healing. We've seen it in the programs that we've run. People, and women in particular, very hesitant at the start to go into a container with masculine, because there's masculine wounding there, there's trauma there. But we've watched the transition and the change that's occurred by having the masculine in that space being real and vulnerable. So, our genders may be different, but a lot of what we go through in life is experienced the same, with some differences, obviously, but, very same experiences. So, this is the work that I do, is that, to really create that change, because nobody should be walking around carrying trauma of any, small, little, big. And when you return to your soul and you live from your heart, which is the journey that I've certainly taken, like, my life is so much richer. And probably the biggest benefit, aside from my physical and emotional health, is that I now understand what I need to do to support my 2 boys. Here comes the emotion. I can feel it again, feeling the energy rising within me, because they're my children. And I want them to live trauma-free. I don't want them being 49 like I am, and having done 11 years of work to reach the point of the joy and the love that I have in my heart today. I don't want that for them. That's the biggest goal that I've actually got from daring to look at trauma, from finding the gold, the shadow gold, and the wisdom that's within that, and then being able to offer that out. My children will not. So we'll be breaking that generational trauma. It stops with me. Again, emotion within me, the energy within me as I say that, because, they're my boys. And I think it's another good example as well about how, there's an onion being peeled back, and we peel different layers at different points in our life based on the wisdom, the knowledge, the experience we have at that time. So, you know, I'm still peeling back layers of trauma, but I'm not afraid to do it now, and I'm passionate about doing it. So, yeah, that's some of what I do. I'm conscious of the time. What I just want to very briefly mention to you before we close is that as part of an offering, a special offering for those, to thank you for your support in joining us in the Unapologetic Project. Thank you for support for listening here. Is I have 3 special offers for the next month around some of the work that I do. So the Journey Home to Soul program that I talked about, which is the biggest program that I do. It is it's 32 weeks in total. It's not run all at once. As I said, it is spread out over a 12-month period, 8-week blocks, and they don't have to all be done at once either. So the Journey Home to Soul program, we are offering a 25% off discount for anybody who's interested in joining us. The next program is going to start. We run them based on the seasons. There's a lot involved in that. It is a deep dive program. So over the 8 weeks for each of the 4 pillars of surrendering, evolving, loving, and feeling, there's a 2-hour online circle. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. They are recorded. So if you can't make it, they are actually a resource that is kept. And everybody, we limit the numbers, so there's only 10 in the container each time around, and that's so that Ross and I can maintain the integrity and the energy of the circle and be able to support and guide everybody that's in that space. It's something we take very, very seriously. So we do limit the numbers. So there's a 2-hour weekly circle. There is written materials that come out as well. There's also audio and visual. There is also experiential processes involved in that. So Ross is Ross does many, many things, but he has a business called Root Cause, which is focused on rapid core healing. So, you know, I was saying earlier about it's really important to get the core of an issue of trauma. So it's not just about psychotherapy or medications, although I recognise their place, but to get into the core of it, that's something that Ross specialises in. So he works from an energetic perspective. He also does something called family constellations, which is where it is looking at that generational trauma and patterns. And he works with energy to be able to shift and move that. So there's experiential, there's also shamanic journeys. We're very much, and we have very wide, shamanism is one of the areas which we connect into, light language. You know, there's a lot of different things that we're interested in, druidry. You know, I'm an intuitive channeler as well. There's lots of different components that are added into that, and you've also got you're there with other people as well, so there's that community as well, and we are also provide support after the program. So it is a deep dive, but we're offering 25% off. We're also offering 20% off the surrender pillar, which is the one that is starting next month. So we run them seasonally, and in autumn, surrender is going to be the pillar we cover, and in winter, the next season here in Australia, it'll be evolving. So we work like that. So 20% off that as well. And then the third is that I am a soul weaver. So I actually work with men and women in a coaching mentor capacity, specifically looking at moving from less of the human, more into the soul, to come back to the soul. And I do work one-on-one. So the offer that I'm going to put out there for anybody who may be interested is 5 sessions for the price of 3. So if anybody is interested in joining me, for any of them, please reach out. We do have a website, journeyhometosoul.com.au. I also have my own website, pennyhawkins.com.au, because my muggle way of existing in this world is that I'm also an authorised civil celebrant. So I've done a lot of talking. What I want to, Journey Home Soul is also on YouTube, Facebook and Instagram, and you can email us, so I will include those details within the group. This recording will also go up as well. So what I want to say is thank you so much for joining me or watching the replay. Thank you for being part of normalizing trauma being a normal word to say, and the energy of trauma being something to explore. It's really, really important that we keep that conversation going, and that we do normalize it, so that, that shame and everything that I talked about earlier, Peter Levine's quote from earlier, trauma is perhaps the most avoided, ignored, belittled, denied, misunderstood, and untreated cause of human suffering. Thank you for being part of the change. Every small little bit helps. So thank you for being part of that with me. As I said earlier, I haven't been checking the chat now, but this afternoon I will be dropping into that space. So I encourage you, share, ask questions. If something doesn't resonate, talk about it. Please just feel free to put whatever into there, and I'm going to spend time going through that, and we'll continue to for as long as questions are coming in. You can also private message me. Contact details are on our website, and I will put up in the group as well. So please just, reach out, be authentic in, whatever is there and present for you. Everything is welcome as you are in that moment, as it is for you in your unapologetic authenticity. So thank you very much for joining me. I send you all the energy of love. And I'll leave it here.